What if I told you that everything you think you know about the Dark Ages in England is wrong? Forget the idea of a land plunged into chaos and ignorance after the Romans left. Forget the simple story of Anglo-Saxon invaders completely wiping out the Romano-British culture. The real story, the one archaeologists and historians are piecing together right now, is so much more fascinating, complex, and honestly a lot cooler. For decades, the narrative was straightforward. In 410 AD, the Roman legions packed up and left Britain. Almost immediately, waves of Germanic tribes, the Angles, the Saxons, the Jutes poured across the North Sea. They were supposedly ruthless warriors who burned Roman villas to the ground, slaughtered the local population, and replaced the sophisticated Roman way of life with a primitive pagan culture. This period, from the 5th to the 11th century, was labeled the Dark Ages, a time of supposed backwardness before the Norman conquest in 1066 brought civilization back. But this picture is deeply flawed. It's a story largely written by later chroniclers like Gildas and Bede, who had their own religious and political agendas. They weren't writing objective history. They were crafting moral tales. The archaeological evidence, however, tells a very different story. So, what really happened when the Romans left? It wasn't an abrupt shutdown. Think of it less like a switch being flipped and more like a slow, gradual power down. The centralized Roman administration crumbled, yes. The economy that relied on shipping goods across a vast empire collapsed. People stopped using coins for a while, not because they became primitive, but because the economic system that required them had disappeared. But did the people disappear? Did Roman culture vanish overnight? Absolutely not. Recent genetic studies have been revolutionary. They show that the Anglo-Saxon migrations weren't a massive population replacement. It was more of a cultural and political takeover by a relatively small elite group of Germanic warriors and their families. The vast majority of people living in what became England had DNA tracing right back to the original Celtic, Romano-British inhabitants. They didn't all get pushed into Wales and Cornwall as the old story goes. Most of them stayed put. So why did they start speaking Old English and adopting Anglo-Saxon customs? It was a classic case of cultural assimilation. The new bosses, the Anglo-Saxon chieftains, brought a new language, new laws, and a new style. To get ahead, to trade, to be part of the new power structure, you adopted their ways. It's like how English became a global language today, not through conquest alone, but through influence and necessity. People didn't stop being British. They just became English over several generations. And what about those burned-out Roman villas? Archaeologists have re-examined these sites. While some show signs of destruction, many were simply abandoned or, more interestingly, repurposed. Imagine a grand Roman villa with its fancy mosaics and underfloor heating. That system required a massive support network, specialized craftsmen, a stable economy, and lots of resources. When that network vanished, the buildings became impractical. So people didn't necessarily burn them in a fit of rage. They might have stripped the tiles for a new roof, used the sturdy walls to build a new wooden hall inside, or turned the courtyard into a pen for their animals. It was adaptation, not mindless destruction. In fact, life in the 5th and 6th centuries was a fascinating blend of old and new. At sites like Wroxeter, which was a major Roman city, we see evidence of large, new timber halls being constructed right in the middle of the old Roman Forum. This wasn't a sign of decline. It was a sign of continuity and change. People were adapting to a new world, using the skills they had masterful woodworking to build in a style that suited their new reality while still living amongst the monumental stone ruins of their past. Now let's talk about the dark in Dark Ages. This label implies a lack of learning, art, and culture. Nothing could be further from the truth. The early medieval period in England produced some of the most breathtaking art and literature in history. Think of the Staffordshire Hoard, discovered in 2009. This treasure trove of over 4,000 pieces of gold and silver metalwork is astonishing. The craftsmanship is exquisite, with intricate designs and garnet inlays that rival anything made in the Roman Empire. This wasn't the work of crude barbarians. It was the work of master artisans at the peak of their craft. Then there's the Sutton Hoo ship burial, that iconic helmet you've probably seen. It's a masterpiece of Anglo-Saxon art, but it also shows a world that was incredibly well connected. The garnets in the jewelry came from as far away as India or Sri Lanka. Silver bowls came from the Byzantine Empire. This wasn't an isolated, ignorant island. It was a hub, a player on the world stage, connected by trade routes that stretched across Europe and into Asia. And the learning. The monasteries of Northumbria, like Lindisfarne and Jarrow, became the intellectual powerhouses of Europe. Scholars like the Venerable Bede were writing brilliant works of history, science, and theology at a time when much of continental Europe was in turmoil. The Lindisfarne Gospels, an illuminated manuscript from this era, is one of the greatest artistic achievements of the Middle Ages. The intricate knotwork, the vibrant colors, the sheer beauty of it, it's a testament to a culture that was anything but dark. The story of the Anglo-Saxons is also not just one of pagan warriors. The conversion to Christianity in the 7th century was another moment of incredible fusion. Missionaries from Rome brought one flavor of Christianity, while Irish monks from Iona brought another, Celtic tradition. These two streams merged in England, creating a uniquely vibrant and creative English church that then sent its own missionaries, like Boniface, back to the continent to convert parts of Germany. So why has the Dark Ages myth persisted for so long? Part of it is Renaissance and Enlightenment propaganda. Scholars in the 14th and 18th centuries wanted to celebrate the classical world of Greece and Rome, so they portrayed the period in between as a dreary, barbaric gap. The Victorians, too, loved the idea of the Anglo-Saxons as their heroic, freedom-loving ancestors, forging a nation from scratch. The simple, dramatic story of invasion and conquest was just more appealing than the messy, complicated truth of cultural fusion and adaptation. But today, thanks to decades of painstaking work by archaeologists digging in the mud, geneticists analyzing ancient DNA, and historians rereading old texts with a critical eye, a new history of early medieval England is emerging. It's a story of resilience, not ruin. It's a story of connection, not isolation. It's a story of incredible creativity and adaptation in the face of profound change. The people who lived in this period weren't brutish thugs stumbling around in the dark. They were farmers, traders, poets, kings, monks, and artists. They navigated the collapse of one world and built a new one from its foundations. They created kingdoms, laws, a language, and an identity that would ultimately lay the groundwork for the England we know today. The so-called Dark Ages were, in reality, a vibrant and formative crucible of cultures. It was a time of dynamic change, a period that wasn't dark at all, it was dazzling. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into England's revised history as exciting as I do, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives that challenge what you thought you knew about the past. See you next time.